Thanks for coming here today. We're going to talk about Joey's annual IEP meeting, and let's start with introductions. So I am Betsy Babbitt. I'm a special education teacher here.
Hi, I'm Carrie. I'm Joey's mom.
I'm Alex, the general ed teacher.
Okay. And I am Casey. I'm the principal of the building and will be serving as the LEA.
So another person to note, the speech teacher is not with us today in person, but we have her on a Google Meet, so we will get that information from the speech teacher that way. Before we start, do you have any questions for us?
No, I know as we go along, I'll come up with some questions because I've got some concerns, but why don't you go ahead and start?
It's been nice having Joey here at school with us this year and getting to know him, and we're going to start with just going over your parent rights, and then we'll talk about some of his strengths and things we're seeing in school, and then just go over the IEP that we have for him moving forward this school year, okay? Okay, so I sent you in your email a full parental rights, so I know you have that, you've received it, and now today I'm just going to go over your parent rights summary, okay? So there's a few different rights you have as a parent, one of them being participation rights. So you have the right to provide information for your child's IEP. You can participate with every meeting that we have. That's why you're here today with the IEP team, okay? The notice rights is another one. You have the right to be informed in a timely manner of any meetings that we have of your student, any changes we might make in the IEP, anything we're proposing, you have the right to be notified of that. Okay? And same for consent. You have the right to give us consent to do any additional testing, to add anything to the IEP. You also have the right to revoke any consent that you might have given us in the past. Okay? Record rights, you have the right to review Joey's educational records at any time that you would like to. You can just ask for that and we will provide that information to you. Okay? And then there's dispute. It kind of talks about if we were to go to a dispute, and I'll let you read through that on your own, but as a building team and an IEP team, I feel confident that we could work through whatever issues there might be and come up with a resolution there. Okay?
Sounds good.
So there's your rights as a parent. I'm going to go ahead and let you take those. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started on the IEP. If you look at this first page, this just kind of talks about your information, your address, your email, your cell phone, and IEP team members present here today. So would you just look at that really quickly? Let me know if anything is incorrect.
Okay, my phone number has changed, and the number is 402-987-6531.
Okay, I'll get that noted.
And we'll need to change the SLT is attending virtually.
Okay, thank you.
And then just clarifying question on Achieve, do we need to make sure our building person who updates Power School updates that information? Okay. Great.
All right, let's flip to the first page of the IEP, and we're going to talk about Joey's strengths and skills. And I just have a couple things noted here, so any members of the team can go ahead and add any strengths and skills that they see Joey at school or at home, okay? So we have that Joey's a fluent reader and works hard. Strength in the area of reading there noted from his classroom teacher. And then Joey does well with understanding language concepts and following directions. What are some strengths you see in the school building, like in the classroom or at home?
He makes friends really easily.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say I've definitely noticed that this year too. He seems to be coming in and really excited to see his friends and happy to come in and really excited to get to class. So thank you for getting him here on time and ready to go each day.
Awesome, I'll add that part in. Mom, do you have any?
I think I've heard from feedback from the school that he's asking more questions, and so I think that's better than we've been in the past.
Okay, good. I'll add that in. The next section of this page just talks about his preferences and interests. He does like to work in a small group or by himself. He's very creative. He likes to draw. Now, when I interviewed Joey, he said that he reports that he feels more comfortable not conversing with others, especially new people. So that was a struggle here at the beginning of the year when he transferred into this building, that he just kind of was quiet and he wanted to keep to himself. And that's okay if he wants to work alone or in a small group. But that was something he definitely was able to articulate. Any other preferences in the classroom or things he's interested in at home?
I'm glad you captured, he likes to draw at home a lot.
Okay,
I would say that as he's been at school, he did start off quiet, but as he's built that friendships with the classmates, he's become more open.
awesome, okay, I'll add that in.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too that, you know, he was able to verbalize that, that he recognizes that when he doesn't know people, it kind of puts him in a little different spot, which is not that unusual. We're talking about that, but to have that recognition really, I think, is showing some growth out of him.
Good, okay, I'll note that in the IEP. The next section of the IEP just has us consider special factors. So there's lots of factors we consider when developing an IEP, and 2 of them stand out for Joey's IEP. So the team has determined that social emotional behavior is a special factor that'll be addressed through the IEP, as well as communication, because he is has a speech goal and has speech services. Okay, he does not require AIM materials. He does not require assistive technology. He is not an English learner, and he does not have a health plan, and he does not have any difficulty hearing. So we just reviewed those quickly, and so those will not be considered throughout this IEP.
Okay.
Okay? Because Joey qualifies for special education services in the area of reading and math and behavior and communication, he does require additional support in all those areas to be successful throughout his school day. We are proposing to continue to pull him out into a small group setting outside of his general education classroom to receive those specially designed instruction with the special education teacher, just to try to close that gap where he's at versus where his peers are at. Directions and tasks and assignments will also need to be repeated and restated to make sure he's understanding all of that. So we'll continue to talk about the effect of his disability as we're going through the IEP, but that's just one statement of how that affects his general education performance.
That sounds familiar and appropriate for him.
Okay. The next section just asks if he will be able to participate in academic and extracurricular activities, just like his general education peers, and that the answer is yes. He has the same opportunity as every other student here at school. Okay? The final piece on this page just talks about needs and concerns, and here's where I would like to get some input from you, Mom. I do have at school that he needs support. He needs some prompting when he does not know how to ask for help or advocate for himself. But what are some concerns that you have with Joey's education or where he's at right now?
I'm concerned that he's not going to be ready for middle school.
Okay.
And I'm concerned that if he is far behind, how we're going to get him caught up.
Okay.
Can you tell us more about, like, what specifically about middle school are you concerned about? Are you concerned that he's not going to be ready for the classes that he's going to have throughout the day, going into that setting socially? What is it that really worries you?
I think it's probably more the mama bear in me. I know that here he's in a smaller elementary. We know that people are really watching over him. He's pulled into small group settings, and sometimes the larger environment is scarier and you see more teachers. And so I'm hopeful that he gains the skills academically and socially, so when he does transition to middle school, that he thrives there and we don't start out kind of in a panic.
Sure. So just know that when we get there, we do transition planning with students with IEPs, with the team that's up there. In addition, we do operate under a school within a school model so that they have teams within all the students, so it feels a little bit smaller, same teachers and some things, because those are all really valid concerns. So it's not, it's a little bit more smaller and planned for in that case. But those are great things that we want to think about, and we are at that point where, you know, transition planning to middle school is important. So
Do you know, do they do tours for the kids, or how do we learn more about?
yeah, so all the students will go up at the end of the school year to visit the middle school. They'll do that as a grade level. They have a designated time. It changes every year. Sometimes they may have lunch, sometimes they might not, but they just get to see the school a little bit and talk about that. But then, as I said, students who have IEPs and special education services. That has a different plan in terms of how it collaborates here with Mrs. Babbitt will communicate with the special education teacher up there before the school year starts. The roster teacher will reach out, and depending on what his needs are, there's some different avenues that can be explored to make that transition smooth.
I just know sometimes I'm a nervous parent and I just wanna keep them on the right track.
Yeah, you and all parents, you know,
Right.
it is a big shift, so absolutely.
Yeah, okay, thanks for sharing your concerns. We'll note that in the IEP, and like Mr. Moran said, we'll have those things in place and we'll definitely keep you in the loop on that. Okay, so this next page is just other information that is important for this IEP. So we know that Joey moved to Council Bluffs Schools this year from Nebraska at the beginning of the year. So we looked at his IEP. We know in Nebraska he was eligible in reading, writing, math, communication, and in social skills. So moving forward, looking at all the data and doing some additional data collection, he's gonna continue to receive those services here in Iowa.
Great.
So we're gonna just jump right into the goals now. So this first goal is going to be a combination of a reading and writing goal. So I would say a literacy goal, okay? So currently where Joey's at is this top part right here at the beginning,
Okay.
up here. So I'm just gonna give you a second to glance through that data and I'll highlight a few things. So this is some data that I collected within my special education classroom just to see where he was at, to place him in a reading group. So as you can see, he's starting to make progress when he's trying to recall some of those sight words. Currently, he's able to identify 24 out of 26 letter names and 23 out of 26 letter sounds. So that right there alone tells me in 4th grade he's still struggling with some of those letters. So we're still seeing some discrepancy there. So we will get that. He will get caught up with that this year, as well as we'll get more focused on getting the sight words and the nonsense words and things like that to where he can understand that.
None of that surprises me because he doesn't like to read on his own much at home.
Okay.
So sometimes we read together when we have time, but otherwise it's not something that he likes to do independently.
That's good to know. Then the next section there just talks about district assessment. So 3 times a year here in Council Bluffs, we take what's called the MAP assessment. It's a computer-based assessment and the students are able to just individually go on and take that test. When he took that in September, he scored 166, which is not considered proficient in 4th grade. I will add a percentile into there. Students who score at or above the 41st percentile on this test are considered proficient. So if you look at the next few scores there, you can see in the spring when he was in Nebraska, he scored in the 21st percentile. In the winter, he scored in the 25th percentile, and in the fall, he scored in the 22nd percentile. So as you can see,
I would just ask, since you've moved into our system, we have this same assessment with MAP. Are you aware of what that is and what that monitors? Was that explained to you prior to coming into Council Bluffs?
Yes, I'm aware, and
Okay.
Nothing you're telling me right now is surprising. I'm just grateful that he's gonna get the support in that area, and those 21st percentiles, like, that doesn't surprise me, because hopefully that's why he's in special ed, right? Since we know he struggles.
Yeah, okay, I just wanted to make sure that you understood that and that had been explained to you.
Yes,
Sorry, Ms.
yeah.
Babbitt.
no, thank you. So Lexia, would you like to explain what Lexia is that the students do?
So Lexia is a program that students are able to work on during their time when the teacher is not doing direct instruction. It's one of our indicators for students being on track, but it provides a literacy skill in a direct fashion. It is a computer program, but it's one of the Iowa State approved methods of providing some intervention in a way, and it's leveled towards students. So for example, I see here that he's still working on some CVC words or nonsense words, and when this leveled him, it actually put him at that preschool level, which when we're still don't have all of our letter names or things like that down, that's where it is. But he can make some quick progress through those levels. but it gives that direct instruction and feedback. And if he is not getting something right, it takes him into this like guided practice level where specifically somebody says, you know, the voice will come on and show them what the model looks like, and then they'll have a chance to do it within that almost error-free kind of setting with the level that he would be at. And it's going to fill those gaps. It identifies areas, stuff that he knows already, he'll be able to work through very quickly. And then I think we'll be able to close that gap. But we do want to see, we know students in this program are at, working within grade level material, generally are meeting our expectations as a grade level.
Okay. So this must be, he talks about wanting to get a certificate. Is that what this is?
Yep.
Okay.
Every time
It's a big deal.
students
So I think
level
we're
up.
gonna have a reward at home when he gets through that level.
Well, that speaks. Do you want to talk about in the classroom? I've been in there when you've made a big deal that, you know, your students have passed and everybody gives them a round of applause. The kids really have a lot of pride in that.
They do, and you know, you can tell that he's working, he's trying, and he's putting that effort into it in the classroom. So I think whatever, you know, Mrs. Babbitt is doing is helping. Obviously, there's still that gap there between him and the rest of his peers, but you know, we want to continue to close that gap, and I think the support that's in place is very beneficial.
Okay.
Okay, so we talked about a lot of data in the area of reading. We're going to be focusing on, over the next year or so, working on a beginning 4th grade passage. We're gonna start there now. He does have some holes, but surprisingly, he's able to read quite fluently. So he's able to read 67% on an early 4th grade passage, okay? So we're going to create a goal based around that, and I want you to look at this literacy rubric right here.
Okay.
Okay, so on this literacy rubric, we're going to work on a couple things, which is within his goal. So he's going to be given a 4th grade reading passage. I'm going to track how accurate he reads that. So the goal being a year from now, we would like him to be up to 94% or higher with his accuracy. Answer a variety of questions around that with 85% accuracy, so his comprehension, and then score 10 out of 12 on this literacy rubric. Okay? So that's how we'll measure his goal moving forward.
And that's what he's gonna do when sees you in a small group?
Yes.
Okay.
And so if you flip the page on this reading goal, this kind of just shows you the graph here. So this is where he started with percent accuracy reading and where we want to get him up to. And then down here is his rubric points. So that's around his comprehension and his accuracy combined. So he's up down here, and we want to get him up to that 10.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So I will progress monitor this goal 2 times a month. I do it every 2 weeks to see where he's at. Progress will be reported to you 4 times a year. So every time you get a report card or a progress report from school in 4th grade from his classroom teacher, you'll also get his IEP data sent home at that time, okay?
Okay.
And you'll see just the data plugged into the graph.
Okay.
Questions on that?
Yeah, that's good.
So math is very similar, and we've discussed some of those ahead of time for it. The communication piece was already discussed with the SLP. She did have to leave, so we'll do an excusal for that.
Okay.
For it. But do you have any questions you want Mrs. Babbitt to follow up with for the SLP based off of your conversation or something like that?
You know, we had a good conversation that she called me before the meeting because she knew she didn't have as much time today, but I think as we go through, she said she put her information in here.
Yeah, and you know, at any time we can revisit anything that we need to, and if you want that. So I think behavior is probably a good area for us to look at, because when we were reviewing this before and looking at the data, it looked like academic goals were on track from last year, but behavior had some spikes and some inconsistencies to it. And with Joey not being here at our school last year, I know that kind of came up where we're seeing him pretty consistent every day. Do you know last year were there things that were changing, or why there was some of those ups and downs, sometimes meeting the target and other times falling pretty far about just behavioral goals?
So we had some things going on at home. I think he knew that we were getting ready to move, and he knew there were some issues going on within the family, and so he he spent a lot of time on the screens, and I wasn't on him as far as follow through like I should have been. So I think his behavior probably mirrored how things were going at home, and I'm glad to hear that they've studied out here because that was our hope.
Yeah, so I think that's a good area for us to talk about. Is this an
Okay.
appropriate goal and everything? Because for what we're seeing from him right now, it seems like he's able to meet that. That makes sense. It did look like it then the year that kind of really had a drop off, but that makes sense.
Okay.
Transition and everything there too. But we're here to talk about what we're seeing out of him right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing we see is that he just is quiet and he doesn't respond all the time in a large group or a small group setting, and so we don't know if he's doing it because he's upset about something or if he just truly doesn't know the material to be able to interact and respond to, you know, what I'm asking him. Especially in the classroom setting, he does not volunteer to be called on in large group and things like that, and so we don't know if that we need to continue to work on the social emotional skills with him, or if it's truly he doesn't know the content in the classroom.
Do you know, I need to get him in to talk to somebody, but the waiting lists are so long. Like, is there anybody that comes into school, or is there anyone that you know of?
What are you specifically seeking? Like a therapist?
Well, we
or
talk about like
somebody-
him being quiet and just like access to some mental health supports, and I know that I don't even know who to go to or where to start, and we're kind of working through some insurance pieces at home, so I don't have him seeing somebody regularly.
But he currently has Medicaid, or what's insurance?
He has Medicaid.
Okay, then that opens up a lot of opportunities
Okay.
for you. So we do have a school-based therapy option that we could go ahead and get him put on a list. The year's already started, and so the list is kind of long, and it depends when therapists become available. I think it's a great idea for us to put him on the list.
Okay.
However, there is a new opportunity within the hospital that parents can choose. It's an immediate care clinic that they've opened up. We can give you the phone number for this after that, and what they do is they can usually get within a couple days an intake meeting set up, and then you can talk to a medical professional about those concerns. Okay. And if you sign a release and you're comfortable with it, we can give them any information. We can take any information you want, like have it ready for you to take or anything. But I think that's a good start to go talk to them about your concerns. And I know they give up to a couple appointments. So we'll get you that number after that. We actually just did this a couple days ago with a student, and they had an appointment that afternoon, and
Okay.
it restarts the process. So
Well, thank you. It's just been overwhelming and trying to navigate all the move and behaviors and just my other kids. It's been a lot.
yeah,
So-
and it sounds like, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I know that we talked like last year with the move, the behavior spiked and would come down. How was he the year before? Was it kind of the same trend, or was he as bad?
There were some concerns, you know, when he was in, that would have been when he was his second grade year, you know, and he had been on an IEP, so they seem to have like peaked last year. So I see issues at home, so what you're telling me doesn't surprise me. I think I'd feel better knowing that he's getting the support at school, and then that therapy piece I think would really help. And in fact, I need to figure out maybe for our family to have some family therapy as well.
Yeah, well, that's great. Keep us in the loop about what's going on with that, any way we can support. If they have any suggestions, those are some things that can come back to us, and we could say, how would that fit in with this within a school setting or anything. But why don't we go over what the actual goal is
So,
and what we want to
Yes,
see?
so as we're working together as a team, I will continue to see him to work on his social emotional behavior goal. So he has this behavior rubric right here, and on the rubric there are 9 points, as you can see here, and he currently is able to master 3 of these points. The goal a year from now, I want to get him up to at least being able to successfully do 9 of these 12 points on this rubric. We're just going to be working with social skills, how to respond to situations, how to productively engage in conversations and respond to questions when teachers ask him and those type of things. We don't see anything physical with him. We see some verbal blurt outs, but mostly he's pretty quiet. So getting him to respond appropriately is what we're going to focus on. Okay? Okay, as we move on, the next part talks about service, activities, supports and accommodations. So I'll just kind of go through each of these boxes. So he has specially designed instruction in the areas that he qualifies in for special education. So the first box just talks about his social and emotional skills like we just talked about. So he will be in a special ed classroom working on those, either a one-to-one setting or with a small group. And we'll be doing that 100 minutes a week. Okay? The next box will be his math instruction. Again, he'll come into my classroom to work on his math instruction. We already talked about all the focus on that math group that we'll be doing. And we'll do that 150 minutes a week, which equals he comes to 30 minutes a day for me in that math group. Okay? Speech is next, and I know speech already talked to you prior to this, but her services are not changing, 120 minutes a month, and the detailed delivery of what he's going to get is listed in there. Okay. The last specially designed instruction box is in the area of literacy, and like I said, that will be doing reading and writing in response to his reading. And that again is 150 minutes a week that he'll be pulled out of his gen ed classroom into the special education classroom, and he comes with another group of other fourth grade students, and we do a reading group together in my classroom. Okay. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say we're ready to talk about paraprofessional services, and as the goals have shown, he's a little further away in literacy that are there. Can we talk a little bit about how the paraprofessional is serving him right now?
Yeah. Sure. So the paraprofessional goes into his fourth grade classroom, and maybe his classroom teacher can also help talk through this if I miss something. Okay. But this paraprofessional goes in during math and in during language arts. And so while there are some times when he's supposed to respond or independently work if he needs some additional support or some accommodations or modifications, the para is able to do that in the classroom for him. Also able to do that in science and social studies. They're in there about 20 minutes during that content time to help him within that, to do that reading with him and things throughout that. They also are encouraging him to respond to his classroom teacher and work in a large group setting.
Yeah, so right now he's getting about 525 minutes a week. Now that we know him and see where his strengths lie, we're wondering if that's a little bit too much support, because sometimes students can get reliant on the adult, and we really make sure that we're providing the right amount of service. And if he's not seeing that, so what our team, the school team, that's what we want to discuss with you here, is thinking that he still needs that level of support with literacy because he's falling a little bit further behind with that, looking at about maybe 45 minutes a day for literacy. But we wanted to reduce that 30 minutes a day in math down to about 15 minutes. Somebody could come in the para to make sure he understands the assignment, but once he understands it and has everything clarified, it looks like he's really able to do that independently. And our teacher here is able to take over in order to make sure he's getting the right support. I mean, how do you feel about that piece?
I agree. I think if we can get down to that 15 minutes, I think would be good for him.
Yeah.
So, sorry, there's just so much information sometimes when you go through IEPs. So, he currently in para support, and is that Mrs. Smith who often, okay.
Yeah.
So, he currently was getting about 100 minutes a day. So like an hour and a half?
Roughly, just over that, yeah. And as we said, that was between literacy, math, and then also that coming in for the content area. Similar, basically what we're kind of proposing is what's happening in content. It's a pretty short time with the paraprofessionals, clarifying expectations, everything. Our goal is that he won't need that paraprofessional for some of it. But I think math is where the strength is, and we're not ready to completely pull that service out because he is used to that, making sure it's there. And then we just want to collect data for probably 3-4 weeks to see what it's going to look like. Is he still maintaining everything that we want to do? Our teacher will help track that. And eventually we may say, does he need that? Does he need more or not? But we're just not seeing that need in math the way that we are in literacy. So that's why we want to propose that reduction of service, because he's taking on, he's doing really well there. And, ideally we'd like to have it where he's not going to need that level. But right now he's shown that he does, especially more in literacy.
Oh, I'm supportive of that because as we talked about middle school, I think middle schoolers don't always want a paraprofessional right with them. So if we can kind of get him where he needs to be to be successful without para support, I think that would be helpful.
Okay. So
I'll make that change on here and reflect that on our other information and on the prior written notice that we're going to reduce a little bit of para support.
And then I see that, like, you're good at taking notes, I'm not, well, can you give me a copy of this?
Yeah, so like I said at the beginning, I hope I said, this is a draft.
Okay,
So we're,
okay.
as we're talking, I'm making changes and we're going through that. This will all be completed after the meeting is held and you've just given us the okay. I'll make the changes and a final copy of this will come home to you.
And when are we going to make this change to paraprofessional services? We will start this.
So I think we will start, I'll get with the classroom teacher and the para schedules and we will start this tomorrow's Friday, so we'll probably get this new schedule will start Monday.
Okay, and we'll also have a discussion with Joey. It'd be great if you could do that at home too, to say that he is doing well and that it's a good thing. I know he likes Mrs. Smith a lot and she really likes working with him too. But we will talk about how it's a good thing and what she's gonna come in and do and what we kind of expect out of him. And that will be where our teacher comes in and definitely helps out with that, but we'll have that support and we'll keep an eye on it. You want to know how it's going at any time, just ask. But like we said, we'll review in 3 to 4 weeks with you. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to come in. We could do it over the phone if it's going well, but it can always be changed. Add it back in, reduced, stay the same, whatever we think we need to do based off of our data.
Sounds good.
Okay, so just finishing up, the last thing on this page is support for school personnel. That just means everybody that works with Joey has a designated time each month that we sit down and we talk about what's going well.
Okay.
Let's look at the data, let's see if something, do we need to change something to help him, or talking about, how we can help guide the para to help support him, and things like that. So that's just what that is noted in there on his IEP. Okay, the next part just talks about accommodations that Joey receives within his classroom. I'm gonna let you just glance over that. I think one thing he's really been utilizing in his classroom is that access to the peer helper when he's not understanding. So if he doesn't have Mrs. Smith in the classroom with him, he does have a designated friend in the classroom that he often can go and ask, and it's like he feels comfortable with that student, so he can go and ask if he has a question that maybe he doesn't want to ask whole group, and that's really been working.
I know he talks about liking PE and music and art. Do his art teacher, or do those teachers know that he might need a little extra support?
Yes, so we communicate all of the accommodations that Joey has with all the teachers that see him
Okay.
throughout the school day.
Okay.
So they do, good question.
Yeah, and you said that really high interest area. I don't think they're really seeing much in there that he is struggling to access or anything. A lot of those art already are a lot of visual supports just built in naturally and everything. But yeah, they do have that. We'll make sure and double check that we don't have anything that's going on there after this meeting. I think that'd be a great thing to just check in that we have the meeting and want to make sure that there's no concerns about him accessing.
I said I haven't heard from any of the teachers, good or bad, so I'm assuming no news is good news, but I just want to make sure they know that he learns a little differently.
Okay, thank you. We will touch base with them. The last few questions on this page just talk about extended school years. The first one, currently the data that we're looking at does not support him going to extended school year this summer.
Is that the summer school or what?
This is for special education students that maybe have had a dip in their data, they've had regression over breaks, or they might need some additional support throughout the summer. We will continue to look throughout the school year. If something changes, we'll let you know, but right now, we're not recommending him for that.
Has he ever attended?
No.
A summer program in Nebraska? Okay.
You said PE is a strength, and I think the PE teacher would agree that he enjoys having him in class. He participates in PE with the rest of his class and enjoys that. He will also participate in assessments here at school, just like the rest of the peers, the standard assessments, but he will have accommodations for that. So he can take any state assessment, district assessment, classroom assessment. He can take that in a small group setting or a one-on-one setting with me. He comes into the special education classroom to do that. He has math and science assessments read out loud to him. He can have extended time, and he also has something that's called speech to text on his Chromebook, where he can talk to the Chromebook and it will write for him. So if you haven't heard him talk about that at home, you should ask him. He's getting quite fluent with it.
Okay.
So he's doing well.
He did a good job of accessing his accommodations for the map testing.
Oh, good.
And so he knows what they are, and he's when we talk about it, he's very comfortable with using them.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah, that's great. And we should note here, it does talk about extended time, that we don't really have many assessments that have time limits on them anyway, because that's not really measuring what we want it to. So while that is available, that's something that most assessments don't have anyway.
Okay.
A little different than when we were in school.
Yeah, thanks for noting that.
Just a few years ago.
The last page, this is just kind of a nice graphic, so you see the pie graph there, that's his whole school day, and this little piece of the pie is the amount of time that he is outside of the general education classroom, in the special education classroom, working on those goals that we talked about today. Okay? So that is all I have for you today. There's one more piece of paper that I wanna go over, and that's just called the prior written notice, and that's just a summary of everything that we talked about today.
Okay.
So we can stop